for Sunday, September 14th to Saturday, September 20th. So last week, of course, it opened up with some unexpected energies, really pushing us into a new mental plane with Uranus retrograding in Gemini energy just hours before we had our full moon total lunar eclipse in Pisces energy on the 7th. And so we are in the middle of a karmic reckoning. There is interdimensional bleeds, there are timeline bleeds, there are soul contracts up for renewal and in some cases voiding. We have a lot going on right now. And again, may I remind you that we are in the depths of distortion right now. We are being eclipsed from the truth. We're being eclipsed from the goal, the vision, the dream that our higher self wants to kind of see so freaking clearly that we're not going to be able to see until eclipse season comes to pass. So this week, we are wrapping up a lot. First of all, this is going to be the last week before the equinox. We'll talk about that in just a second. This is also going to be the last week that Mars is in Libra energy, which thank goodness for that. We are building up to the new moon solar eclipse at 29 degrees in Virgo energy on the 21st. So this is a monumental week. And considering the fact of the unexpected wildcard events that popped off last week, this is definitely going to be a week where we start kind of sorting through those smaller details. Now, we're kicking this week off with the last quarter moon popping off at 21 degrees in Gemini energy here on the 14th. That's really going to illuminate what side we're on. Now, I'm not talking red versus blue. I'm not talking us versus them. None of that, although we are watching that particular energy manifest on the global stage. But we are in a season where we have been reprogramming ourselves, rewiring our neural pathways, understanding that this new version of self comes with a new operating system. And the operating system, that's been loading, that's been installing since the beginning of Virgo season. We've had an illumination of different situations and circumstances that is definitely going to change the path, the direction that we thought we were walking. But under this last quarter moon in Gemini, Gemini energy, of course, ruler of the mental plane, and showing the extreme division between different narratives, different dialogues, different lenses, different perspectives. So the last quarter moon of any cycle is a time to kind of look back to the new moon that, of course, began on August 23rd with that 0 degree Virgo energy. And now we have to take in all that has happened, all that has transpired. We have this beautiful opportunity to step away from the old narratives, the old dialogues, the old ways of looking at ourselves, looking at the world around us, the stories that we tell ourselves, the information, the wisdom that we have basically locked in and don't really want to be challenged with. The Gemini energy is going to present itself in choice points, in decision points. And of course, the last quarter moon is a time for us to realize what it is that we're leaning towards and then start eliminating, removing, releasing anything that is going to block that path. So of course, just a reminder, we are still in eclipse energies. So if you're feeling cray-cray, if you're feeling the craziness, the chaos, the wackadoodle energies, you're exactly where it is that you're meant to be. The clarity that we are wanting, technically speaking, we're going to gain a little bit of that here on September 13th when Mercury and the Sun come together for their cazimi. But over the next week, we are going to have little tiny glimmers, shimmers of insight, really help kind of piece together what the greater, grander picture, vision, and goal now is. So later in the week, on the 18th, we're going to have Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, ruler of information, communication, how it is that we express ourselves, ruler over this Virgo season. A lot of activity with Mr. Mercury as of late. Mercury is going to be leaving his rulership in this Virgo energy for Libra. Now that's going to be a whole different vibe. Libra energy, of course, it is an air sign. It's a cardinal air sign at that. So we are definitely going to feel all of that head space pressure. Even more than that, indecision, is definitely a thing with Libra energy. It's represented by the scales. The scales right now are teeter-tottering back and forth and back and forth. And just when we think we know, new information and insight comes in to prove that we know nothing. Just when we are sure of a path, of a plan, the Libra energy is going to bring in that uncertainty, that second guessing, that backpedaling, if you will. The one thing with this Libra energy is that we're able to see both sides of the coin, both sides of the story. And that's a beautiful thing because right now, with Mercury and Virgo energy, we are so hardwired, focused on these smaller little details that we don't even know are true. We're looking for validation. We're looking for logic. We're looking for practicality. We're looking for some sort of confirmation that the information that we're currently dealing with is accurate, is truth. But we're so focused, kind of have, tunnel vision goggles on, that we get kind of stuck in these smaller details and we're not really open-minded enough to explore the ifs, ands, and buts, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas outside of the current focus, the current information that we're dealing with. So Mercury in that Libra energy is going to be a totally different vibe, first of all, in our own individual selves, but it opens up a different side of our mental plane, and it also opens up our communication style. Libra energy is the mediator of the zodiac. We want to find a common ground. We want to find a compromise point. We are, looking to fight for justice and what is fair. And so that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to kind of watch play out, not only on the greater, grander global stage, but in our own individual lives as well. We're wasting no time. Not only 24 hours later, on the 19th, we're going to have Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, worth, pleasure, and money, shift out of Leo energy and move into Virgo energy. So Venus has been in this Leo energy. It's literally the only fire energy that has been anchoring us into the heart space and staying real and true and authentic to this new higher self, this new version of self. Venus has been working through a lot of issues where self-confidence, self-esteem are concerned. Specifically, back under the full moon event that we just had, that lunar eclipse event, there's been a lot of topics and themes, a lot of shadow parts of self coming up to the forefront for us to realize where it is that we may not feel deserving or worthy of the goal, the vision, the dream that we want to build, that we want to create, that we want to manifest. And as we kind of move into the Virgo energy, which is the fixer, healer, repairer of the zodiac, it purifies us. So while Virgo energy is grounded, it's also ruled over by Mercury. So there's a lot of restructuring of our headspace going on. Again, the narratives we tell ourselves, the storylines that we are very immersed in, the lens, the perception, not only of self, but that if we look at life through, all of that is up in the air right now. We're in eclipse season. All of that is changing right now. And when we shift out of the Leo energy that is giving us the boldness, the bravery, the courage to do the hard things, to actually pursue this new truth, this new reality, this new passion, this new desire, the Virgo energy that Venus is going to be moving into, that's when logically, practically speaking, we're going to integrate the realizations that we are kind of receiving while in the Leo energy, and we're putting it into practice. We're bringing it into our day-to-day lives. We're integrating it, and therefore we are coming up with a logical, practical plan on how we're going to make some of these adjustments, how we're going to make some of these improvements, first and foremost within ourselves, secondary in our day-to-day lives. It starts with the smaller details. Again, Virgo energy, it's still in Virgo season here. We're realizing that what we pour time, energy, and attention into on the smaller details is either going to set us up for success or set us up for failure. We have to become very mindful of the minute details that make up the greater, grander plan. And of course, the big energy here is building up to this new moon solar eclipse in Virgo energy. It is going to be at the critical crisis karmic degree of 29 degrees. It is a perfection degree. It's a mastery degree. And as we close this week out, we are going to be tossed into that new moon eclipse window. And so just a reminder, new moons are the dark phase of the moon. There's no illumination of light in the sky. And because this is a solar eclipse, again, we're being blocked from seeing things clearly. And when we're in a normal dark phase of the moon, we have to sit with what isn't working. We have to sit with the experiences that we no longer want. There is a breakthrough energy that comes with every new moon cycle. And because this is a solar eclipse and it's all jacked up and on steroids, we can expect that this is going to be a little bit more intense, a little bit more, I'm going to say, crazy and chaotic than normal. Granted, it is in Virgo energy, it is an earth sign, so there should be an element of feeling a little bit more grounded, I would say, compared to if this was taking place in a different sign. But sometimes being grounded means that you are in your physical body, you are in your present moment, regardless of how uncomfortable it may be. And of course, the whole point of Virgo energy is to identify the problematic situations and circumstances, what isn't working, in order for us to fix it, heal it, and repair it. But I think as we kind of move into that eclipse window, I mean, technically we're in it, we're in between eclipses right now, but the closer we get to that particular event, the more cray-cray we're actually going to feel, the more intense things are going to get. And I know that's a hard thing to kind of imagine with the most recent events popping off here. But again, we're not being eclipsed, we are being eclipsed to the truth. There is a very thick level of distortion going on here. And, you know, Mars in that Libra energy, coincidentally enough, when shit hit the fan here this past week, Mars was at a 22 degree. And in Libra energy, that is a very semi-violent type of situation where justice and legal systems get all kinds of aggression, all kinds of anger, all kinds of, well, violence. And so to get Mars out of this Libra energy is going to be super favorable. But of course, when we're already in this eclipse window, Mars is going to be sitting at the final degrees of Libra energy, and any planet sitting at the final degrees of any sign, that is intense. Like, that is just pressure on pressure on pressure. So we do have to expect that these unexpected events, there's still some dominoes to fall. There are still some cards that need to be played. There are still some wild card energies that are going to be tossed out there. And because of that, we definitely have to hold the line, hold the space, hold the light, if you will, because the collective is failing miserably and we are definitely going through it. Now, this being the last week before the equinox, any time that we are reaching a solstice point or an equinox point, time speeds up. We're in an eclipse this time around, so time is already kind of wackadoodle. It's already hella distorted because of this interdimensional timeline bleed. But it's going to be more amplified here this week because we're getting closer and closer to this equinox point. This equinox point, typically speaking, things kind of get crazy before we reach a solstice or equinox point because we're being karmically tested on what side of life we are going to be anchoring in on, what path, choice, direction we're going to be leaning into for this next karmic chapter. And so things are definitely going to get even more cray-cray here this week. And emotionally speaking, it's going to be a very heavy emotional weight to carry. And it is going to feel a little bit all over the place because, again, we're in this like whirlpool of karmic energies right now because of the eclipse. And it's very hard to feel grounded and anchored into anything because, of course, when we try to ground and anchor specifically into Mother Earth, she's going through her own wackadoodle shift right now. So it's very hard to feel stabilized when there is nothing right now in this earth plane that is stable. And so many of us have to really kind of lean into the practices, the resources that we have in our toolbox to stay as stable as possible in this period of instability and really manage our energy correctly, which is a very hard thing to do when you are a sensitive soul, when you are a light worker, when you're connected to this grid and you're carrying the weight of the collective's unconscious shadow part of self on your shoulders, so to speak. So it is going to be another very interesting week. Now, That being said, we have a lot to cover. We have a lot that could be popping off as far as ascension symptoms go. We're going to dive into that right now. But of course, if you want to understand what is going on as far as your energetic field goes and the rips and tears that your environment create in that energetic field and how to map some of the energies that you're feeling back to those energy centers in order to do the shadow work to fix, heal, and repair that particular energy within you, I am going to recommend that you get a hold of my book. I know that's a selfish plug, but at this point in the game, I would really say that it is a helpful resource. I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I'm saying it because I have had people reach out to me because they are in a very, desperate time. They're very confused. They're looking for confirmation, for validation for their experience, and have felt that, the information that I've provided in that book has been a guide for them. It has brought them a lot of, I'm going to call it calmness in a crazy time because it makes sense. And that's the problem right now, is that nothing makes sense. So if you want to do a deep dive and understand what is going on in your own energetic field, and of course on the collective's energetic field as well, and why all of these ascension symptoms happen in the way that they do, please guide yourself to either download the book or order it off of Amazon. Get that as a resource for you to be looking up the way that you're thinking, the way that you're feeling in real time. It's a reference book. Any ache or pain that you're feeling, any emotion, any thought that you're having is connected back to an energy center that is having a direct effect on the shift, on the change, on the transformation in your energetic field. Now, outside of that as a resource, if you're not already subscribed over on my Patreon or here on YouTube to the Full Forecast channel, I'm going to recommend that you do that. I find that eclipse season really kind of, stirs the pot, so to speak. Even light workers and grid keepers that have been doing this for years and years and years, we all lose our way in eclipse season. That's okay. It needs to happen. But if you need extra support and extra validation for what it is that you're going through on a daily, then the Full Forecast channel is something that you should absolutely subscribe to here on YouTube in order to access those daily forecasts. Or again, you're going to get a lot more content, a lot more support over on my Patreon. Now, I already kind of previously mentioned that we are heading into the last quarter moon phase in Gemini energy here on the 14th. And I am going to take this time to recommend that you do the work. And you can do the work by the moon guide. You can access that moon guide over on Patreon, either by becoming a subscriber or, of course, just downloading it pay-per-view. This is the closure to the first Virgo lunar cycle. We are going to have 2 back-to-back lunar cycles that are rooted in Virgo energy. The second one begins under that solar eclipse event. And that's going to be a very telling, very interesting dynamic for us to be working on for this next month as well. And I would say that you should definitely be catching yourself up. If you're not doing the work in your moon guide, you should catch up prior to us entering into the second lunar phase because they're working together. They are feeding off of each other. And it is very rare that we have 2 back-to-back lunar cycles rooted in the same energies and give us a totally different vibe in the second cycle because, again, it's eclipse anchored. So it's going to be a very interesting dynamic for us to be, doing the shadow work that has to be done in order to create the space for us to, activate those creator abilities and start manifesting the realm and reality of our choosing. So with all of that being said, let's jump into the ascension symptoms that we could be expecting to pop off here this week. So confusion, okay? I think we can all agree everybody's a little bit confused. Everybody's a little bit unsure about what the F is actually going on. Now, the division that is currently taking place on the global stage is a huge indicator to me that, again, the collective has failed miserably. And for those of you that are like, oh, there's no hope, there's no light in your forecast. Well, I'm sorry, I don't sugarcoat shit. This is reality. Take a good look around. Do you think that this is a favorable timeline? Do you think that the events that transpired over this past week are indicative of the collective actually awakening and doing the work to fix, heal, and repair the situations and circumstances of our broken systems and foundations? Because I'm telling you, the distortion that is currently taking place on the global stage right now is the absolute foundation and structure that the revolution is based off of, okay? And if you've been with me for any amount of time, you would know that 2027 is when shit hits the fan. And these events, these situations, these circumstances are all the cornerstone foundational structures needed to set the tone, to set the stage for how the revolution takes place. Technically speaking, the rebellion, the revolution has already semi-begun, but you've not seen anything yet, okay? And this is what I'm saying. The division that has been created by this past week's events is a clear indicator to anyone attached to the grid that we did not launch ourselves on the correct timeline. Now, if you think that's negative, well, I'm sorry about your perspective. It is reality. Take a good look around. We live on Devil's Playground, and I would say at this particular juncture, he's having a great time, okay? We have to do better. And, I know as a light worker, as an energy worker, as a grid keeper, we're like exhausted here, but at the same time, we are carrying way more weight from the collective shadow than we ever signed up for. And it's getting to a point where many of us are just so tired and so exhausted that we want to tap out from this job altogether. And I wish we could to a certain extent, but karmically speaking, we're only here on this particular soul mission and contract to do what we're currently doing, even if it is as exhausting as it currently is. The confusion and the division on the greater, grander global stage is being mirrored back to us on an individual level and vice versa, because we're feeling the confusion and division within ourselves. There is two competing dialogues, two competing narratives, two competing path directions, choice points that every single one of us are trying to weigh the pros and cons about right now. Many of us do not know what to do with our own damn selves. We do not want to continue doing life the way that we've been doing it, but we don't know what that other alternative is. And the pressure points that we are experiencing because we are in a chapter of karmic reckoning, that's what eclipse season is all about, specifically on this Pisces and Virgo axis, specifically with Saturn retrograde at the 29th critical crisis karmic degree of this Pisces energy. This is no joke. We are in a year of 9. That year of 9 requires endings and closures, requires us to elevate, to see the greater, grander picture, the mission, the purpose here. And once you know better, you have to do better. And that's where many people in the collective are failing. We know better, we're just not doing it for whatever reason. And a lot of those reasons are due to the old programming that we currently are trying to override. We're trying to recode. We're trying to rewrite it in the best kind of way. Thus the division of the mental plane. We have the ego fighting the higher self. We have our inner realm fighting the outer realm. We have the old version of self fighting the new version of self. We have the old realm and reality that we built and created fighting to stay anchored, to stay alive, knowing damn well that the new goal, vision, and dream that our higher self wants us to pursue is just around the corner. And so when you watch these particular pivot points of endings and closures actually coming to the intensified point of watching them end and die, there is this struggle for power, and the old doesn't want to die. It wants to remain alive and in power. And I'm talking about everything. We're talking about relationships right now. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about homes. We're talking about communities and friendships and all of these things. And even though we have some big flashing lights on the greater, grander global stage trying to grab our attention and distract us from doing the work within ourselves, because again, reminder, if you want to see the change in the world, you have to be the change within your own damn self first and foremost. We doing the work and holding the light and really kind of evolving within our own selves is the only way that we can impact the collective. And so we find ourselves at like this tipping point, which is absolutely natural. It's hella predictable. Nothing that has happened over the course of this past week, this past month, this past year, this past decade has been out of the norm as far as scripted astrology goes. So there should be no surprises here. Everything is very predictable. History does repeat itself. It absolutely is showing historical events just in a modern day situation and circumstance right now. And in your own individual life, you're probably seeing situations that are very similar to some of the tough love life lessons that you've previously lived through, kind of reappear and be represented in a different way. You know, maybe it's with different people, or maybe the topic and theme has been skewed just ever so slightly. But there's a sense of familiarity that we're all dealing with right now in the most uncomfortable way possible. And I really feel that the confusion and the division is going to continue here this week. Eclipse season always does this to us. We're not sure what to do. We're not sure which way to go, and we're not sure how we're going to get there. But again, there are some astrological aspects that still have to happen in order for us to gain that clarity, that insight, that certainty. So we have to be patient with that. And I know patience is not a virtue that many of us were born with. And again, nobody seems to be able to find that online for purchase. If you do, let me know. So we go from one moment of feeling fine, feeling, hopeful that this is going to be the point in time, the pivot point where things are going to change. And this is going to be the catapult point, the launching point to dramatically shift us into a better timeline, into a better space, into a better reality. And just as that takes over, we go back to feeling absolutely numb, absolutely nothing. We go from feeling everything to nothing, everything to nothing. And where Mars is in this Libra energy, and Mars kind of rules over our physical energy has not been the best either. Our inner realm is all over the place. It's nonstop, but our physical energy is lacking. And so again, it's almost like our inner realm is at war with our outer realm. Mars is the god of war. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of aggression coming up, not only within our own damn selves to find that peace, harmony, and balance within ourselves, within our inner realm, our outer realm, within our old self versus new self, between our inner realm and the outer world in which we want to change. And so, although, and again, I'm not really going to go into a deep dive here, Mars is going to be moving into his rulership in Scorpio energy. And Scorpio energy is where change and transformation takes place on a soul level through the death and destruction of self and the rebirth and resurrection of self. Mars is going to be illuminating to us what it is that we actually desire, what it is that we're actually passionate about, what it is that we're willing to fight for. And in this Libra energy right now, we're flip-flopping. The scales, again, are just way out of whack. We are all over the place, and we are feeling that, energetically speaking, not only in our mental plane, flip-flopping back and forth between different ideas, different choice points, different storylines, different looping conversations that we're having with ourselves, but we're also seeing the flip-flop back and forth with who it is that we actually are. Again, I'm going to use the computer analogy because that seems to make the most sense, but we've decided to download a new operating system, and that takes forever. And it's taken a sweet Jesus time, but is finally getting to a point where we're going to be able to reboot and restart this computer and run this new operating system for the very first time. Here's the thing about that though. When you run a new operating system, there's always bugs. There are always, apps on your computer, whatever the case may be, that are going to glitch out. And you're going to realize that some apps need to be let go of. They're not going to be compatible with this new operating system. There are going to be some apps that start glitching out that you may have to upgrade. Okay. These are all parts of self. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, the way you behave, the way you perceive, the way you see, all of these things. And so what happens is that, you go through all of these troubleshooting aspects to get everything running as optimally as possible. And you sit with that new operating system for a couple of days and it's foreign to you. It's awkward. It's not comfortable. It's not supposed to be. Nothing new ever feels good right from the beginning. The only thing that ever feels good is predictability, is comfortability, and you don't get that from anything new. The particular point that we're going to find ourselves at the end of this week as we enter into that new moon solar eclipse in Virgo energy, and we're right on the eve, the cusp, the precipice, if you will, of Mars being at those final degrees of Libra energy as he anticipates rising up into his rulership in Scorpio energy. And then hours after that, we hit that equinox when the sun actually moves into Libra energy. And that is the karmic checkpoint that we're closing off the current karmic chapter that we're trying to decide whether we're ending and closing it or whether we're going to continue it right now, and locking in this new karmic chapter that we're going to be entering into with that equinox. And so what we're realizing right now is, some of us are going to be like, you know what? I'm not really comfortable with this new operating system yet, but I can see the benefits of it. And I can see that it's going to, run my software. And I can see that it's going to help me do my work in a much faster, much more, better way. But there are going to be some people that immediately want to remove that new operating system and go back to the old one because it's tried, it's tested, it's true, it's comfortable, it's familiar. You may not be ready for the upgrade. And that is not defeat by any means. It just shows you where it is that you have more work to do within yourself to feel fully confident enough to catapult yourself into new foreign territory, because that's not for everybody. If you take a good look at the explorers, well, you have to be a particular type of personality to actually be an explorer, to go out into uncharted territory, be the first one to ever step there, and have not only an open mind, but a boldness, a bravery, a courage to actually be that person. Not everybody's cut out to be that person, and that's okay too. We're all here to play a different role. We are all important to the greater, grander, I'm going to call it fabric of destiny. And we are just at a very pressurized point here this week where it's coming down to the nitty gritty, where we're going to have to choose. The last quarter moon in Gemini is going to force that choice point. Coming to the end of Virgo season is going to really force that choice point. A new moon is forcing that. Eclipse is forcing that. Mars at the end of Libra is forcing that. The equinox is forcing that. So there's a lot of force coming at us energetically here this week. That force is going to be felt on the physical body. Energetically speaking, again, when you understand your own energetic field and you understand how external energetics from the cosmos, from the solar system, from environmental factors play a part in how it is that you receive that energetic information, then the body is the messenger to tell you not only how you've received it, but how it is that you're understanding it. And when the aches and pains come up, when the dysfunction comes up in the physical body, that is an error in the coding. The new operating system is butting heads with the old operating system, and there's going to be bugs and glitches, and there's going to be programs that aren't going to run in the way that you had them running in the past. And this is where, again, troubleshooting requires patience that many of us don't have. And so when you feel it in your physical body, it's going to feel flu-like. It's going to be like, oh, am I having an allergy attack? Am I getting sick? Is this a cold? Is this a flu? One thing that is going to be very common, regardless of where it is that you're at in your healing journey, is the aches and pains, like you have the flu, full body aches and pains, where everything hurts, your hair hurts, your fingernails hurt, everything hurts. That is likely going to be hitting each and every single one of us, depending on where you're at in your healing journey. That's going to depend on the intensity and the length in which you feel it. And one thing is for sure is that when you are when you're downloading a new operating system and you're running the new operating system, the bugs, the glitches in our physical body is highlighting for us where there's energy blockages from the old programming. And that old programming is an amalgamation of emotional and mental and physical pain and trauma. And if you're not doing the work to bring your attention to these aches and pains and doing a deep dive to peel back those layers and understand what chakra that particular sensation is connected to and the energetics of that particular chakra in order to put you on the path to do the energetic work needed in order to free that chakra up and have it operating in the time and space and in the circular motion that all of your other chakras are operating in, there's going to be dysfunction until you get that in alignment. And again, it sounds very complex. It's really not that complex. It's very simple when you understand energetics. And you have to start somewhere. And if you're like overwhelmed with what it is that you're hearing, again, I'm gonna shamelessly plug my book right now because that's why I wrote the damn thing. I did not want to write that book. There are a lot of things in my soul contract that I do not want to do, but I've done them because I'm here to honor the soul contract so that I can complete my mission and I can go home. And the book was part of that. And I am really going to continue to plug that book because it's going to help the collective. It's just the collective doesn't know about it yet. And so again, if you are somebody that needs to kind of do a deep dive into understanding this energetic work, I'm going to welcome you to kind of dive into all those resources that are available to you. When I talk about the physical pain, like in the structure of our bodies, those flu-like symptoms are coming mostly because our lymph node system, our detox system, is going through a major recalibration. Virgo season is about purification. And a lot of the detox, elimination, releasing energies create a little bit of inflammation in the physical form. And your lymph nodes and your lymph system is responsible for getting rid of the poisons in your physical body. And the lymph node system gets inflamed when there's too many toxins in your physical body. And energetically speaking, when there's a lot of emotional and mental junk and gunk and residue left over, and the energy is trying to flow through your meridian channels and it can't, that's when inflammation happens. That's when there is a flare up in the physical body. And that is why we feel like we're coming down with something, like we feel like we're having a flare or an allergy attack or we're getting the flu. Typically speaking, it comes on pretty quick. It leaves just as fast, but you have to understand what you're dealing with in order to, again, trace it back to the emotional and mental root cause for the reason of why you're holding on to the cellular memory. That's what all of this is about. And so with the most recent events that have popped off and with the intensities still yet to come at us here this week, the neck and shoulder pain and pressure are going to sometimes be unbearable. So maybe you can't move your neck. Maybe it feels like you got knots in your shoulder. When I say to you that we are carrying more energetic weight from the collective than we were ever meant to, we can literally say here this week that we can feel the energetic weight of the world on our shoulders. That's why we're having a hard time. That's why the neck and the shoulders are seizing up. That's why we're having a hard time moving our neck from one side to the other, because one side is the old world that is collapsing. The other side is the new world that hasn't even manifested yet. And we're kind of stuck in the middle of this chaotic bridge where we don't know if we're safer to stay on the bridge or to jump ship, to jump off of said bridge. And for those of you that are like, are you kind of encouraging us to like jump off a bridge? No. These are metaphors and analogies, okay? Let's stay grounded, rooted in reality here. And I say that, y'all are like, oh, well, you probably don't have to say that. Yes, I do. If you guys seen the amount of crazy messages that I get from wackadoodle people sprinkled all over the world, I at this point am so aware. And actually, I probably should be a little bit more aware than I'm currently operating. It's really hard for me to filter. I don't like coming off inauthentic at all, but I also have to be very careful with my words because crazy people are coming out of the woodwork. People are not mentally stable. people hear what they want to hear as a validation for the energy and actions that they're already contemplating, just to place blame on someone else. And I am just not wanting to be that particular punching bag or that particular target to carry that kind of karmic weight for somebody else's poor actions and poor decisions. Anyways, that's probably a topic and theme all in its own that I don't really want to get into right now. So the shoulder pain, the neck pain is definitely going to translate into, well, let's just talk about the upper body for a second. You know, the headspace, we talk about this every week, and we will talk about it every week into the future too, because the headspace, the crown, is where we receive, you know, downloads and solar codes from higher realms of intelligence. And then we bring it down into the lower level of the intellect that Mercury rules over. And Mercury is very strong in his rulership right now. And that is where we kind of make sense of things. And we add our egoic lens to it, logical, practical, you know, analyzation of the information, data, and details. We really pick it apart, specifically with Mercury in this Virgo energy right now. This is like dissecting every little bit of information that we're bringing in. So the headspace is always on tap. The headspace is always pressurized, but there is this like manic confusion. I know we already talked about confusion and the division in the headspace, but there's like this rapid processing, this accelerated type of filtering of being able to, you know, it's almost like you're revisiting multitude of conversations, overlapping conversations from all different periods of your life. And again, I went into a little bit more depth and detail about this, I think, in last week's forecast, or maybe even the week before. I don't know. Time is a mystery to me. But it was about how right now we are seeing all of the versions of self operating in all times, all dimensions come together as an overlay in order for us to see this whole version of self before we separate again and go on our own, you know, interdimensional journeys here. And so that particular pressurized system, squeezing us back into a sense of wholeness before we essentially get separated and divided yet again, that's a lot of pressure on the system. And this is why we're having like interdimensional bleeds of old situations and conversations, old pain and trauma wounds. There are all kinds of different timelines that are merging back to one. This is why there are memory flashes from different time zones, timelines in our life. This is, you know, it's a very interesting time of recalibration, and it's not fun, nor is it easy. But that actually gives us a distorted lens in our headspace for us to be analyzing ourselves from. So again, when I say to you that even on the greater, grander global stage that we're not seeing anything in its most accurate form, we ourselves are not thinking in our most authentic form either. We are not seeing ourselves. We're not seeing our options and opportunities from a clear set of glasses. The glasses are dirty. They're smudged. They got junk and gunk. We're squinting. And our eyes, because we're having a hard time seeing the forest past the trees, and we're having a hard time ignoring the ugliness of the world, and we're having a hard time orienting to the more positive, optimistic outcomes in our lives, our eyes are going through this recalibration as well. They're dry, they're burning, they're itchy. There's like this squintiness going on because we're really just trying to protect our eyeballs from what it is that we've seen and what it is that we no longer want to see. And we're just having a hard time focusing in on what currently is, what could be, because again, we're in eclipse season. We're being eclipsed from the greater, grander picture, from the truth of the matter, from the most accurate form of how things are unfolding. We're not seeing things in real time. And that is having a huge impact on what we're telling ourselves, because we use all of our senses to form thoughts, ideas, and opinions. And when our senses are being blocked or skewed or manipulated in a way, that confuses the brain. And when the brain is confused and we start kind of, I'm going to say, making up our own stories to fill up the gaps of information that we crave, but we're not getting right now, we start kind of, I'm just going to say, coming up with some wackadoodle situations, some wackadoodle thoughts and opinions. And again, reminder, what you believe is your reality. And that's a scary thing to really think about when we think about all the individuals, awake or asleep, conscious or unconscious, healed or unhealed, having their own little realm, their own little reality inside their head, and what it is that they are piecing together and what it is that they're telling themselves. And all of this energy feeds back into the collective. And that's why we're feeling the pressure, feeling the weight, because the collective is absolutely confused AF, right? Like that's just where we're at. So the eyes are definitely going to be a thing. Let me also just say, on your lower lid, like where your eyelashes come out, there's going to be an itchiness there, and it's really hard to scratch it. And you may, it's not a sty, but you may actually see like little bumpies appear around your eye. Biologically speaking, that's just a buildup of creatine in your skin. You have to exfoliate and make sure that those pores are open. So it is something that you can fix. But again, it's a skin eruption. And when the skin erupts in any kind of way, that is a physical manifestation of the energy that is coming out of our inner realm, coming out to be seen, coming out to be released, coming out to be processed. And, yes, around the eyes for sure, but we're going to continue this from last week, like skin eruptions, skin rashes. They just appear, and you want to pay attention to what area they're appearing out of, because again, that is a messenger. Our bodies are sending us messages for the energetic information in which they're receiving. And so if you're somebody who got a rash, let's say on your elbow, and then somebody else got a rash maybe on their ankle, yeah, both of y'all are having a skin eruption, and that is a huge message to you as individuals, but you both have different work to do. A rash on the elbow could be that you're afraid to take action, put hands on, your realm to take control of certain aspects, while a rash on, let's say, a lower limb or an ankle is fear in movement, fear of actually taking the next step forward. And so all of these areas of your body, they represent something different because they're ruled over by a different chakra, a different energy center. And again, different emotions, different thoughts, different experiences are all governed by these energy centers. That's why we have to be the detective all the time and map it out, paying attention to what our body is telling us, and then tracing the root back to the root cause so that we can do something about it. So with the itchiness for a second, we are going to have an itchy throat as well. Now, there's a lot of mercurial energy. Mercury rules over communication. Yeah, we're hella confused in our brain space, but we also have a lot to say, but we don't know how to say it. And as of late, it's really not a safe place for you to be expressing yourself. I feel like it's the Salem witch trials all over again. But at the same time, there is an eruption of energy coming in from our core that wants to be expressed, that needs to be said, that needs to get out of our physical body, and we can't. For whatever reason, maybe we can't articulate it, or maybe we can't feel safe enough to express it, or maybe we just don't know how to put it in the right words. There could be all kinds of varying type of reasons of why we are holding this energy in. But our throat chakra, itchiness is healing. Our throat chakra is going to feel very itchy, very scratchy, like you want to swallow your own tongue just to be able to kind of scratch that itch that, again, is just not going to go away so easy. But in that most space, we're holding a lot of fire. We're holding a lot of tension. We're holding a lot of truth. And our lips are so red and so swollen and so dry and so sore that there's just no amount of lip chap existing on this planet Earth that is going to take the burning, take that discomfort away. And so, pay attention to that as well. I feel like, the third eye is going through a very heavy upgrade. That is essentially, part of the reprogramming of the operating system. But that has a major impact on, sinus congestion, sinus pressure. And of course, our eyes are already squinty. We may have, congestion so much so that you can't move the snot in your face, or it's running like an open faucet. You can't stop it. Again, that's going to put you in a situation to be like, am I getting a cold? Am I having an allergy attack? What is going on? Again, with the flu-like body aches, and here's another one that kind of carries over from last week. I would say that the majority of us will be feeling cold. Like we are going to be leaning towards the cold side of our body temperature. And again, when you feel hot, those waves of hot, that is the energy trying to break up the energy blockages. When you're running cold, it means that the energy coming in has a open channel and it's running through you very quickly, which is a good sign. But it doesn't feel fun to be cold, especially when you're struggling with these body aches and these cold and allergy and flu-like symptoms. It just doesn't feel good to be this cold all the time. But again, reminder, we're in between Pisces and Virgo energy here as far as these eclipse events go. And until we get to that new moon Virgo window, we're still in the emotional ocean and the karmic depths of Pisces energy, and that is cold. And because Pisces energy rules over the feet and we have cold feet because we want to move on, we want to move forward, we just don't know what that next step is, we're going to not only be feeling that coldness, that absolutely penetrating dampness in our bones that we can't get rid of, but our feet are likely going to harness a lot of that cold ass energy as well. We are going to be feeling in our hands a lot of weakness, and hopefully it's just weakness. You could find yourself having hand injuries. Please be very careful. Do not rush. That is when little silly accidents happen where you could be, jamming fingers in the door or, slicing through your hand, creating an injury there. Hopefully it just stays as a level of weakness in our wrists and in our hands. But, here's the thing. We are kind of confused. We feel like we have to take action and make moves in order to create a better world, a better us, but we don't know what those moves are. And our palm chakras, which are, where our creator abilities get activated in, we are afraid to use our creator abilities right now because the plan, the path, the strategy is not clear. And so when you have all of this energy kind of locked up, stored up, ready to go, and it doesn't have an outlet for it to be poured into, it starts to kind of eat away itself. And then you start to feel weakness in those particular, finger joints, in your thumbs, in your wrists. And it could, stem all the way back up to that neck and shoulder pain, or maybe you're feeling like that neck and shoulder pain is shooting down your arms and affecting your wrists. But when I say to you that it's probably going to be a week that you're going to need both hands in order to hold your coffee cup, please just trust me, because otherwise you're going to be spending a lot of time with the dropsies. Okay, the dropsies are a thing. Gravity itself is being manipulated, is being recalibrated. The interdimensional timeline bleed is a real thing. Time and space feel off. Nothing feels right. And we have to be okay with that for right now. We have to be okay with not feeling okay, because this is the recalibration that the earth needs to go through in order to land us at the pivot point that we will find ourselves in towards the end of the week as we move into that equinox gateway. In order for us to stabilize very quickly, then we're going to need a little bit of time to kind of get a grip, orient ourselves to this new lay of the land before we move on and move forward. When I say to you that this happens every eclipse season, I'm not even over exaggerating. I've been doing this for 15 years. This is so predictable at this point in time. I don't understand why anybody gets surprised at the feelings that we feel, at the situations and circumstances that pop off, at the disorientation that we feel. To me, this is like clockwork. It's so predictable at this point. That's why I love astrology, because how can you be surprised when you already know to a certain extent what you can expect to happen? So if you're wondering, when is this going to calm down? We need to get through the new moon solar eclipse. We need to get through that equinox gateway. But when I say to you that this is like a roller coaster ride that comes to an abrupt stop, and then the jolt of that stop gives you a little bit of whiplash before you can actually move and get off that ride, that is what we're going to be moving into, not this coming week, but the next week. We got to get through this eclipse. We got to get through that equinox. Then that ride is going to come to an abrupt stop, an abrupt standstill. And then we're going to have to really, get our bearings back before we see any kind of forward movement. So the hand cramps, that's where we kind of left off. Let's jump down to the lower body. The lower back is definitely providing a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. Why? Because we don't feel stable. Secondary to that, that's where the ego programming, the survival programming is stored, and that's going through a reprogramming, a rewiring of sorts. And so when you take a look at the lower back all the way down to the feet, we use our lower extremities to move forward in the world, or just to move, period. And right now we're we're paralyzed. We are in a state of energetic and cosmic paralyzation. For good reason, though, because we're in an eclipse and we can't see the path. We don't know which direction to walk in, and we won't know for, I'm going to say the next couple of weeks. And you have to be okay with standing in the same spot. You have to be okay feeling like your legs don't work. Okay. The knees may lock. Maybe you're having Charlie horses. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night with tremors in your legs or restless leg syndrome. There's a lot of energy that is being kind of, stored up in the lower extremities that needs an outlet that we can't give it right now. And so, maybe you feel off balance. Maybe you feel like you can't stand. Maybe it comes and goes. Maybe you're just experiencing the instability of not knowing who you are, how you think, how you feel, what's going on in the world, what path, what direction you should be taking from here. And that's okay. We have to be okay with not being okay. So the lower extremities definitely going to give us a good go. I feel like we talk about digestion every week because we have to. There's more nerves in our stomach than anything else. And when you're feeling anxiety and worry and uncertainty, that's going to have a major impact on digestion. Virgo energy is very connected to the digestive tract as well. But even more than that, like last week, we were experiencing like nausea and bubble guts and all this kind of stuff. This week, we're going to have extra bathroom trips. And the reason for that is because we're going through a purification. The reason for that is because we're going through a detox. We got to get this shit out of us, literally and metaphorically speaking. Okay. So, it's definitely going to interrupt our sleep pattern, which I don't know about y'all, but it hasn't been that great anyways. We're going to be up more times in the night going to the bathroom. We have to get our, again, lymph node system operating. We have to get the shit out of us. All levels, all ways, all different ways that you could think about that. That's how it needs to happen. We got to get the shit out of our head to clear up the mental plane. We got to get the shit out of our heart to free up that emotional baggage. We got to get the shit out of our guts, literally speaking, because it's toxic and it's keeping us in a state of poison paralysis. And energetically speaking, we got to purge the old operating system. So we got to get it out of us. With that being said, though, sleep state, let's talk about that for a second. It's been an absolute shit show, usually is during eclipses, specifically with the Piscean eclipse, because that's, dream state. But you should be receiving insight in your dream state with how the timeline or how the version of self has changed. I mentioned this, I don't know if it was last week or the week before or the week before that, because again, everything's kind of a blur to me. But if you were dreaming of different environments, different people that you don't know of here in this physical realm in reality, chances are you're leveling up in a big way. If you are having lots of dream states, lots of dream content related to your past situation, karmic situations, intense situations that you thought you were done processing, but lo and behold, here you're living it over and over again in your dream state, likely you still got some more work to do that you have to consciously work on in your waking state. And so that should be a true indicator on where you're at as far as whether you're launching, catapulting into this next chapter, or whether you need to kind of, stay in this chapter until you build up a little bit more strength, a little bit more confidence to be the explorer and to walk into the darkness of the unknown and not be fearful about that. So there's a lot of strong dream indicators coming at us. And I would say with the, let's call it craziness, confusion, chaos of the collective, the astral realm is being reorganized as well. And we just have to kind of, I'm just going to say, make the best of it. I know I'm only sleeping like maybe 3 hours a night, which is just absolute bullshit. I don't know how to say it any better than that. I don't know how we're operating like this, but I do know in eclipse season, many of us are not welcome in that astral plane while they're going through the reorg. And it makes a lot of sense of why, but it just doesn't make it very happy, very comfortable here in this physical realm when you're operating on less sleep than your physical body needs. So we have to expect that the heart activations are going to continue. Again, that heart activation is it's the bridge between your ego programming, the lower half of your body that's rooted to the earth, and your higher self programming that is connected to the cosmos. That heart chakra is the bridge in between the two. Venus in Leo energy, specifically as she nears the final degrees of Leo energy here this week. There's going to be more intensity there to really illuminate what you're truly passionate about, what you truly want, desire, deserve in this world, and where it is that you're still holding a lot of fear, a lot of pain and trauma, to actually open yourself up to receiving the prayers, the goal, the visions of your dreams. And so, again, we have still some emotional baggage that we're going to have to sort through. It's almost like when you pack your bags to go on a vacation, you get to the airport and you realize that you're overweight, and you kind of scuttle off to the side and you open your bags up and you try to rearrange everything, and you're just trying to figure out how you can take everything and make everything fit without, having to pay an obscene amount of money in order to take all of these things with you. This is just a reorg. We're taking things from our carry-on and we're taking things from our baggage and we're trying to reorganize things and we're trying to repack in a more efficient way. Specifically leaving behind anything that is not going to serve this new programming, this new higher self. So with that being said, I'm taking a look at my list here and I feel like I've covered as much as I can possibly cover for this week. I just feel like we are at a very interesting point as we normally approach the midpoint between eclipses. It never fails that shit hits the fan, that wild card events come out to play in order to change the course of the collective's path and therefore the individual path as well. And again, we are not in control in eclipse season. The universe is sorting us out and putting us on the path that we need to be on in order to evolve humanity-wise, collectively-wise, and individually-wise as well. And sometimes it doesn't make sense why we are on the timelines in which we are, but we obviously have more work to do. And that is a huge disappointment to, I think, the majority of us awakened light workers that were really hoping that this next launch point was going to be a successful one. But lo and behold, here we are doing the same old shit. We obviously haven't learned our lesson from historic events of the past, and so we are being presented with another review of history in a modern day style in order for us to, again, have the option, have the opportunity to handle this one a little bit better. Are we going to see that we do that? Well, we need to sit back, we need to observe, and we need to wait to see. But all we can do right now is learn that we are on this ride, whether we want to be or not, whether we're afraid of roller coasters or not, doesn't matter, we're on it. So we just have to learn to sit as patiently as possible as this ride comes to what will be, I'm going to say, a very abrupt end. That being said, we still have a lot of power. We still have a lot of control over our own energy, over our own thoughts, over our own emotions. We do not want to give in. We do not want to play those games. We do not want to further divide. Unity is the only way out of here, and we have a lot of work to do. I thank you so much for tuning in. I send you so much love, and we'll talk to you soon.